Welcome to this demonstration of complementary test data solutions from Delphix and GenRocket. Delphix is the leading DevOps data platform, and GenRocket is the leading synthetic data platform. Both companies in this demonstration will show acceleration, a rapid provisioning of secure test data for DevOps, coverage, synthetic data augmentation of production data, and efficiency, streamlined test data provisioning and management. Let's take a look at the demo by Larry Morgan of Delphix.
Right now, in my synthetic database, synthetic data, where I'm going to put the data, right now is the tables are empty at this point. All right. So I'm just going to put this into a virtual database for this team to be able to work with. Over on the Delphix side, I have a timeline set up of the different data. Okay, so when I populate this data, I'm going to be able to have set of bookmarks so I can come back to that data anytime I want to. But we're going to run it first to make it happen. All right, so let me just come over here and grab my commands because I do not remember them. And we'll actually run this epic from GenRocket that was created, that the GenRocket team created for me to populate that bank demo database. All right, so this will just take a few seconds to run, and we'll get the data in there for it. Now, as it's going in, it's like I said, it's going into one of the virtual databases. It's being made in this case, and it could be going down to the source, but in this case, it's being made available for a specific team as far as I have how I describe this scenario. So the data is going to be populated out there, and I'll show you that in just a second. As soon as this is finished. I said it just takes a minute or two to run.
Yeah, so GenRocket has a self-service area that allows you to build a G case or a test data case. And the test data case can apply rules about how the data is generated. And the cases can be rolled up into stories. And the stories can even be rolled up into epics. And what Larry's running here is an epic. And of course, an epic would be used when you're going to be populating a full story of data, if you will. Heisel, anything that you would like to add to that before we go back to Larry?
Yeah, and I think, Larry, you were running the large epic, which was at the lowest level, was generating over 10,000 transactions, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, it generated 9,900 of them. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So as when we're talking about integration with Delphix, one of the things I can now do is saying, all right, that data is in, as I just showed you, is in my database that's controlled by Delphix. I can actually now at this point in time say, you know what? I want to make a bookmark of saying initial load of data. Because now by creating this bookmark, no matter what I do to my data in that virtual database, I can always come back to this point in time. So what we're going to do to show a change is, as soon as this creates this bookmark here, we're going to add more data to the database, running another population command from GenRocket. So now I actually have more data inside of there than I had after my initial run, and we're always able to come back to this point in time again in the bookmark. So this is how the application user would actually be able to control how much data they have out in the area. And some of our customers actually use this to create what they call a data library. You know, I'll have a bookmark saying, okay, this is my initial load of bank demo data. This is my, expanded load, things along those lines. So they can go back point in time, click on the bookmark, and be able to rewind back to that point in time inside the environment. So that's what's going on right there. Let me go grab the next one to add some more transactions. Yeah, here we go. So we're just going to run another command against the epic that they had created and add some more data inside of it. And we'll show you in a second at the database level how many more records got added and then how we can roll back in time.
And Larry, if I may sort of add a comment here, think of a use case where you have production data and you've used Delphix to copy and mask that data, but you want to add more data. You don't have as much data as you would like. You want more transactions, more history. Yeah. So you have the ability with GenRocket, through what we're being showing here with Larry, to augment that data and add additional data. Back to you, Larry.
Absolutely. In this case, we've actually added another 10,000 transaction records. So if you look here, we're at 9910 originally, and we've added some more. We're up to over 20,000 records. So I've added it into there. Again, come back to my Delphix. I can now say, at this point in time, I actually want to create a new bookmark. It says additional data. Create it. And you can see we keep maintaining your timeline. We don't change the timeline for you. And then what you can then do is, as that one's being created, as you have your bookmarks, you can see I have a bookmark for an empty database if the developers want it, the initial load, the additional data, any of those, there might be after test run, whatever, so they can actually work through all the different issues and everything else inside of it. Okay, let's go on to the other scenario where we were talking about going to do the subset of data. Now, in this scenario, what we're talking about is I want to take a large production set of data. Let me show you what it looks like. Order prod, which is get the right. Oh, I already had it up there. Sorry. Order prod, which has, for example, for order item, it has almost 15 million rows in it. It's got over 2 million rows for order headers, things along those lines. Right now in my order test, I should have nothing. Okay. There are no records. This is the case of where, okay, I need to validate maybe a batch run of data, and I don't want to take the time for a full month in processing of data. I'd rather deal with a subset to make sure that anything I've done, I got the coverage that I need in testing, and I got what I need for my testing. So I want to do it on a smaller set of data to deal with that. But I still want to leverage virtual databases so that I can, like that time series I was showing you, I can roll back my time. If I do a destructive test, I can restore the data without having to recreate it, things along those lines inside of the environment. So in this case, we're going to run subsetting environment again, set up inside of the GenRocket world. We'll let this run. This is going to run for a couple minutes. But just to give you an idea, like I said, it's going to bring it down, smaller set of data, so you just have what you need to do your test coverage.
And if I might prompt you, Larry, let's go to Heisel Taylor. So this is the GenRocket capability. Our internal name for this is G Migration Plus, and the plus is for extra performance from an earlier version of G Migration. Could you just talk about that technically for a moment, Heisel?
Right now, what he's doing, he's running a command from the command line called G Migration, and it allows him to migrate data. The database he's migrating from is this database here. We used GenRocket initially to populate this database with, about 15 million rows of data at the lowest level. And he's basically choosing a subset of that data based on, I think, Larry, you're using a particular state, correct?
Correct, California.
Yeah. And so what it's doing is G Migration Plus is traversing up and down the tree here to find all of the subsetted data for the state of California. And it should come out to around these numbers here once it's pulled out the values, because we created a pattern of the data that we're generating of here. Now, on his example boxes are smaller boxes. When I run this here on my local computer, on my iMac, this runs in around 40 seconds or so. It's a multi-threaded engine. This particular engine threads multiple things at the same time, so it can take huge amounts of data and subset that from a original database to a copy of that database.
Okay, so it did finish. So if I take a look at my order test environment now in my source, we'll be able to see the numbers that he was talking about. So you can see the number of rows, Okay, we took the addresses and everything else, doing that traversing of the database. So we got that pulled together. Over on the Delphix side, I want to show you what we can do. All right, I have my data. This is my representation of my production data set out there. All right, or my database out there. I'm going to take a snapshot of that, because what I want to do right now is I want to get a point in time view of this data from my MySQL environment so that I can use it multiple different ways. I can drive multiple copies of this data off of this compressed and deduped set of data that's the snapshot's just been taken of. All right, when I took this snapshot, it just took the change data, brought it over. I now have my copy of my storage. All right, so it was like a 7 gig file. We're down to 2 gigs, including copies of information in this data. I can now make use of this data into my subsetting environment down here. You see, I have something called subset, which is just one of the databases I've created off of this, a virtual database of it. So what I can do then is I can come over. Again, I have a timeline for my subsetting data. Let me just get to it right here. I have my timeline. I can see right here in my bookmarks that I have where I had it empty inside the environment. But right now, I want to bring up this new set of data that just got created. So I can actually do a refresh on this instance and now bring it up, and it will be represent the exact same thing of the subsetting that had just been done inside the environment. So it's actually going to be coming up here right now. Originally, it's zeros. As soon as it's done doing the refresh, this will now be populated with the same information was down at the lower level. The reason I show it to you this way is because from this point, I can create multiple copies of it. I can share it with other teams. All right. This could be a part of that data library again, but it's something that, I want to have it on the source as well as in the virtual side of the world so that everything is in sync. And I can then keep things in sync as time goes on. But the idea is just to be able to take it that way through your environment. So as soon as this is done, and it's running right now, we can just see all the different steps we go through when we're refreshing data to keep it in sync. And this will just take maybe 2 minutes at the most to get this all done. The big thing that we're doing is at this virtual database level right here at the subset, all we're keeping are the change blocks between it and demo source. So if you run a test, the only space that's taken up on this V subset after your test are those records that you made changes to. That's the only thing we're keeping track of. So we're saving you that storage, and we're giving you that timeline capability to go back in time over the environments.
So, of course, a development and test team can directly leverage that VDB, but sometimes they don't want all the data. They want a subset. So there's an ability to then use GenRocket, which you've just seen, to take a subset, and then Delphix, as you just saw, can virtualize that. And that smaller set, the California set, as he showed, can be available to a dev and test team. Then in addition to that virtual database, we can augment. You can take the subset, or you can add data and essentially adding more transactional other data that's available. And then just showing down, sometimes GenRocket is generating, you saw Heisel before, where he was talking about other use cases, whether it's a data feed or message data, or perhaps data stubbing. Sometimes that's used separately because it's handling some use cases. Larry, back to you.
All right, thank you. All right, so that refresh is done. Let's go back over and take a look at MySQL. I'm in my subset environment. Right now, look at my orders test. And just run this command on it. You'll now see that I have all the rows, the subset of rows that were created from the GenRocket run. So now at this point, if I come back over to my timeline, we're down here at this point in time. All right. At this point, I can set another bookmark so I can always come back here, because if I run a destructive test and I find an error and I want to rerun that destructive test, I can easily come back to a given bookmark, or if I say, you know what, I need to go back to another point in time along my testing environment, I can do that any way I want to with the timeline that we provide you in this, or even take it back to a empty order environment here that I have a bookmark set up for. So really you get the idea of there's a lot of flexibility with how GenRocket and Delphix work together to leverage what the scenarios are that you may have for your data, right? Just taking that data now to something that can be used in a timeline with different characteristics to it, whether it be synthetic data added in, complete synthetic, it's a subset of data, or any combination thereof inside of your testing environment.
Well, we'd like to thank Larry for that wonderful live demo. Now, just to summarize the different deployment models of GenRocket and Delphix together, of course, we can start with the production copy, and Delphix can virtualize that data, and that data can be directly made available to dev and test teams. Now, sometimes they don't want that much data, as you saw, and we want to have a subset, and GenRocket has the ability to subset that data, which can then be virtualized and delivered to dev and test teams. Or, as you saw in the demo, we're able to take data and augment that data, add to existing data. So there's a blending of production data and additional synthetic data that's added. That can be then virtualized by Delphix and delivered to dev and test teams. And then in some use cases, there's a need for all synthetic data for certain use cases like message data or data feeds or permutations and combinations. And that can be provided to dev and test teams. So you can see very complementary solutions. To learn more about Delphix and GenRocket, please visit our website at either genrocket.com or delphix.com. Thank you for watching this live demonstration.